Bonjour, good morning everyone. Excuse me interrupting your head down time.
Je suis désolé de vous interrompre. Je suis Katie Hill.
UK, which is the charity that's rolling out the B Corp movement in our country. I think you have heard a little bit about different types of approaches to thinking of how to make a difference through business, and the B Corp movement is one such approach. First of all, I just wanted to say a big welcome and thank you so much for coming to our session. To mention a few things of how this session will run. We'll be in English, speaking for myself, for Suvanka and Charlotte, and we will switch into French for Abdoulaye. I will introduce you to them all. So if you have your headphones to hand, you'll have permanent exchange of the information. You won't miss out on anything. What we will do is I'd like to introduce each of the speakers, and if you may, please do think of things you would like to ask and questions. If you could jot them down while they're talking. What we'll do is run through each of these speakers, and then we'll have lots of time for questions at the end. But it'd be fantastic if you don't lose those thoughts as the presentations are coming through, and then not be able to recapture them. So we're hoping to have a really interesting conversation once you've had some food for thought from these wonderful three people. So what you're going to hear about is the theme of this session, as you know, is around how do we reintroduce a sense of a real community, of a fabric of what makes a local economy work when we're in such a crazy global world, and how do we balance those two issues between being in a highly globalized economy and society and yet having such very fundamental issues that are needing to be addressed at a community and a local level. And each of these entrepreneurs you will hear from are tackling exactly that problem or that issue, and I think with huge effect. And what's clear is there's no one way to do this. What we look at in the B Corp model, which is, I'm sure, something that many other frameworks look at, is we look under the bonnet of the business and we say, what is the impact of this business on the environment, on its community, on how it's governed, on the employees, and what's its overall impact in what it's trying to do. And in looking at the community, we're trying to pick out a few key issues which are reflected very much around this theme. What is the fabric of the community, and how does this company really contribute to that and make it stronger and better? Is it through donations? Is it through volunteering? Is it through a much more integrated program to engage and listen and be part of what the community's needs are? And there's some wonderful examples of initiatives that have gone on in different cities and towns and really matched local need with business provision and created really transformational models that address things that go way beyond what might be otherwise considered rather more token gesture. So these are some of the things that I think we have to explore and to see how to make the most of them. So that's just by way of, I think, setting the scene. You're going to hear from three people from three different continents, from India, from Europe, and from Africa. And Suvanka is going to start. Suvanka is an extraordinary entrepreneur with a huge vision, and he is really changing the lives of local farmers, about 1 million local farmers in India, by helping them understand what is the market for their agricultural products and how can those best be used, how can they best market from that. And he will tell you about what it is that can be so transformational whilst at the same time, at a local level, whilst at the same time thinking about a much bigger systems change to improve understanding of how markets can work better for people at grassroots level growing their fruit and vegetables. So I think you'll have some really interesting thoughts to pick up on there. We're then going to hear from Abdoulaye, who's going to talk about Appy Afrique, which is his program, which he has introduced 2 years ago in Senegal, which is tackling two particular issues. One is around, with a huge growth in population, he's looking at how do we manage issues of waste, and particularly looking through issues to do with feminine hygiene and how that could be completely reconstructed and changed, both to help and understand and educate women and their carers and children who are affected by all the monthly seasons of their physiology, but at the same time also tackling real issues of waste. So we're going to be really excited to hear about how you can help at such a local level with a big issue that's over the horizon. And then we're going to hear from Charlotte, who is Head of Impact and Learning at a company called Cook Foods in the UK, which has grown massively and is a hugely thoughtful, responsible business that is trying to make a big difference to how it does business. It sells beautiful food, but it does it in a way that really works and thinks about how that makes a big difference to individuals in the workforce, in the teams, in the shops, to the customers, to the local community. So very different perspectives, but I think you'll find that there's a lot you can pull through there about what is it that we're trying to do when we're in a very globalized world, but trying to make a real difference locally. So I'm going to start by introducing you to Savanka Mishra from Equitier, and he's going to have a slide deck here. But as I say, don't forget your questions. Please write them as we go. Thank you. Savanka.
Thank you, Katie. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. So, the first thing that I will start with is by asking a question. What if I said that the global food security can be ensured and taken care by smallholder farmers? And for those of you who are not aware of who a small farmer is, the World Bank defines it as any individual or a collective of farming household that has a farmland within 5 hectares. And that allows them to use minimalistic mechanized tools, their own family members as labor, and largely whatever production is done is used for self-sustenance or their own subsistence. There's a plethora of difference between small farmers in Europe, in North America, in South Asia, primarily from India, where I come from, and in South America. And the reason I say that is because I've hopped and skipped each of these continents to understand what the actual definition, the demographics, and the user persona of a small farmer is. And it is astonishing to see that a small farmer in Brazil would have 10 hectares of land. However, a small farmer in India would have close to about 1.5 to 2 hectares of land. There is a big difference in how you really want to help so many farmers from across different regions while you want to help them connect and secure the food production that will happen globally. So even before I come into solving or answering this question about how might smallholder farmers be able to feed the world, it is important to understand the opportunity that we are looking at. The global population, which is going to increase, and the land within which the farmers are going to produce is going to shrink. And let's not forget about climate change. It's affecting local, regional, and global economies everywhere. So how might we be able to help a small farmer in a situation where a lot of risk is attuned to even production of the food, let alone its transportation and its consumption across consumers? So in order to address this opportunity, I'm not going to delve so much into facts, but what this will entail is that we are lurking at the threshold of imminent effects and eminent effects of climate change. The food production is already unmatched between demand and supply, which is causing an anomaly in terms of food insecurity. And the smallholder farmers lie at the pedestal of solving this problem because they are not only the stewards of nature, not only do they manage the soil, the nutrients that flow throughout the land, but also produce the crop that retains carbon dioxide emissions, and also are able to produce the food that can come into the market and can be sold off to different institutional wholesalers, to retailers, and to consumers alike. However, in order to address to this global problem, the smallholder farmers today struggle quite a lot. Now, their struggle is owed to how might I be able to grow a certain type of crop when I do not know the anomalies of weather patterns and seasonal variations might just affect my production cycle? How might I be able to use the right inputs, the seeds, the nutrients, the crop protection, and how might I know the right prices at which I need to sell the particular crop? All of this is an information paradox. Now, the reason I call it the paradox, because all of this information exists, stacked into research universities, academia, policy institutions, and journals that are published for the knowledgeable and the learned. But for the first line of the entrepreneur that feeds us, that information needs to be made available. And not only information, but information that translates itself into action. It is not enough just to say to any one of you, go use Citibank. But it is important to define the purpose that why should you be using Citibank, and what purpose of savings or current or checking account should you be looking into. And this was an analogy that I wanted to draw between providing information followed by action. Now, all of this is similar to any smallholder farmer across the globe. Now, World Economic Forum has coined a new term defining the SMAC, which is Social Mobile Application Cloud, as the fourth industrial revolution, where businesses, either SMEs, medium-sized to large-sized businesses, will start shaping into the digital landscape. And within this digital landscape, the most important beneficiary, again, let's come back to the smallholder farmer, should not be ignored. And that is where the leapfrogging effect came into the thought process behind what Ecotier and what Bloom does and what I'm trying to reshape within smallholder farmers using digital technologies to craft their pathways to sustainable lives and to produce enough food for local and global population. Now, here is an important thing to note, and please stay focused on this aspect, that all of this put together, this is India, largely 120 million farmers, and it's 1/4 of the total smallholder population across the globe. So India itself has 25% of the market. And beyond that, you're looking at a $2.3 trillion return on investment, all encountered by financial, social, and environmental return on investment, put together as a $2.3 trillion ROI. The market that we are talking about, the fourth industrial revolution, the digital landscape, that in and of itself is within a market of $11.23 billion US. So there is enough scope, market opportunity for varied types of entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, development practitioners, to use business as a force for doing good and benefiting the smallholder farmers. Now, one of the important things over the years while we were working and I was traveling from village to village within India, we understood that these farmers do not need just one solution to a problem, because the problem of agriculture is complex. You need to know everything. You need to have all the information followed by the requisite action to help your crop grow adequately. And therefore, in order to address such a complex solution, or rather complex problem, we needed comprehensive solutions. Comprehensive that will not only be local, but also transform into a systemic change and be scaled globally. Because the point be noted that we're talking about 500 million smallholder farmers across the globe. And I'm not at all saying that I'm the only one in the market that's going to reach and impact them. But however, curating the pathways where I would be able to lead or be of the pioneering step where different stakeholders that are working within this would be able to partake in helping smallholder farmers get access to such comprehensive and scalable solutions. While trying to determine the answer to this question in the last 6 years, in 2017, I took the risk as an entrepreneur to pivot my entire business, to pivot the technology that rides the business to help smallholder farmers, and to pivot the approach in which how I really need to scale to have a local impact and also to have a global impact. Now, in order to do that, what we landed up doing is brought in 2 Ashoka Fellows, certified B Corps, together that have worked across opposite sides of the world. FedTrasa in Latin America and the Caribbean, Ecotir largely in South Asia. They both had similar approaches to define and derive a bottoms-up development for smallholder farmers. FedTrasa with its 3-tier farmer development model, and Ecotir with its technology-driven, a human-centric model to help smallholder farmers connect to markets and information. With the coming of these 2 players, the solution essentially starts moving more into the food value chain. Instead of just being local, what Ecotir was doing, now we've started going global. Instead of just providing digital technology solutions where information could be translated into exchange of a product or a service, now we have food value chains through FedTrasa where they would be able to provide fair trade into North America and Europe, which they are already doing. Now, that becomes this central solution called Bloom. And please take a note that the spelling is not incorrect. When we were trying to derive why did we want 3 O's in this, it is meant to be extrapolated. Now think of the current conundrum where the situation of small farmers is so bad, the predicament that they face is absolutely abysmal to help them grow. Wherein what we are trying to do is provide a positive disruption to lead them towards pathways of sustainability. Now, Bloom, in short, if I say what Bloom does, is if a small farmer sitting in the hills of Andes in Peru or in the southern states of India puts in that she wants to grow broccoli as a crop, Bloom as a platform will chew that input and spew out the information saying if broccoli is the right crop for the farmer to be grown. What it would have already taken into consideration is a vast amount of big data on the soil and nutrient health of that land where the farmer is going to grow this, the local weather conditions on which this crop needs to grow, the soil and other environmental parameters, and then use that to recommend to the farmer whether broccoli is the right choice or not. If broccoli is the right choice, it then helps the farmer connect to the seeds, the input companies, the nutrient companies that will then provide that farmer with those new inputs to help farm that crop. Once broccoli is harvested, Bloom then shows the price at which broccoli could be sold in local market, in the regional market, and if we have FedTrasa buying it, in the global fair trade markets as well. So in short, it allows the farmer to get the right information at the right time, self-perpetuating her and the machine to know more about these interactions the farmer is going to do with multiple stakeholders. But how is this magic actually possible from the perspective of helping smallholder farmers within those communities get access to all the services? They get access to information, they get access to the marketplace, and they get access to using the data that we build, the big data that we have, to create simple analytics such as credit score for smallholder farmers, providing consumer insights to a big wholesaler like a Danone on if Peru or Mexico is better for the avocado or not. And this is how the current situation of applying artificial intelligence and big data into agriculture befits the fourth industrial revolution definition of helping agriculture value chains. Now, as I just told you in a gist about all the 3 aspects, what I'll move towards is how do we land up doing this? Now, it's important to note that we're talking about two different sides of farmers. Now the question would be, hey, Stavankar, like these farmers are barely able to take control or charge of their lives, and you're providing them with smartphones and smart tablets to undertake this activity. Wouldn't this be costly? How is it that they are able to meet these needs? In order to address this, I'll draw a simple example from India. Now, India has 120 million farmers. 1/4 of those farmers use a smartphone. So they're adept in using smart devices. They've used Android devices largely because they are cheaper and available in the market, and therefore they become the direct users of our mobile platform. They can plug and play and start using it, and they'll get access to the plethora of services and solutions that Bloom has to offer. The remaining 3/4, 90 million, it's divided into two. 40 million are divided into groups. You might have always known of farmer cooperatives or farmer collectives that are institutional groups in order to help them facilitate those transactions with the market and have a better bargaining power. The best example, the best analogy for this are trade unions. So those collectives are important to be using this, and within that collective, we also identify a local community member that belongs to that village or a group of villages to help the farmer get facilitated with the transactions. The best analogy for this, again, would be the neighborhood shop that you go to for buying your groceries or any other supplies that you need for your household. That individual is based within that community. And within that community, he or she facilitates these transactions that Bloom has to offer by providing these solutions to them. That's the precise reason why we mention that this is a human-centric model. There is a human force working on the digital platform, helping those smallholder farmers that are inept in using these smart devices to not be left out, to not be ignored. And that's where the definition of inclusivity comes in. It becomes all-encompassing. And these could be entrepreneurs that belong to the same village, same community. They could be sons and daughters of the farmers themselves that are looking for a better livelihood opportunity without having to migrate to urban areas. Now, what we have also established is robust market connections and robust local, regional, and international connectivity. So what I'm finally presenting here is the aspect of localization, inclusiveness, and democratization. The localization involves every stakeholder in this value chain to be benefited, right from the farmer to the educated members of the community, to the companies such as the likes of biofertilizers, bioseeds, anyone and everyone that wants to have an access to the farmers and help them get access to better seeds. Financial institutions, both banks and insurance companies. Why? Because they've got the power of data to help them understand what kind of investments or credit underwriting or insurance indexing needs to be done. The buyers, and finally, end consumers, like all of us. Inclusivity is defined by allowing each stakeholder to play its own role in the market, without having to tell them precisely that this is what they need to do. The pathways for them to use Bloom and to have themselves bloom is quite extraordinary. And they themselves will be able to see that the benefits are not only in reduced costs or boosting of yields and increased income, but of a higher social brokerage between a local community member and a farmer. They are supposed to be built in with the trust that they come in with and provide the solutions that will most benefit the farmers. And when I say democratizing, that was precisely in the vision on the first slide, where I mentioned about democratizing the future of farming. It is farming that we are looking at. It is local. I would rather say it is hyper-local in nature. However, the facets and the contours that affect farming is global. And that global phenomenon is then brought into this hyperlocal nature using technology, allowing different stakeholders that are already partaking in the ecosystem to continue to partake, but in a data-driven manner. And also allowing everybody to play on the same level playing field. Farmers get a choice if they want to work with this input company or they want to sell this. Farmers get a choice if they want to price their product at X or price their product at 2X. And this is bringing in fairness into the system. It's the beginning of how the farmers and the rest of the stakeholders will be able to furnish and see that this is the most important aspect that we would like to give ahead, which is the future of farming. Having started in India and in one of my paternal villages, which was easy for me to start in, we've slowly grown it into 4 countries, and we plan to be there in 30 countries. I mean, it's a big task. It's an arduous vision that we have. However, it's followed by this underpinning mission, which is the machine that we've built, Bloom, what we have curated. How might we have that machine know more about the farmers than the farmers know about themselves? Not scary. This is AI either at its best or worst. I'm going to leave it to all of you to judge. But this is how we think, we believe that the farmers will be at the driving seat of getting benefited from data-driven solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Suvanka. Wonderful. How inspiring. And how marvelous to hear, I think, of the values that are underpinning all that you're doing, this sense of trust and fairness and partnership that you're making is obviously a key part of that. And the role that AI can have and machine learning can have if we empower it properly to work really well for us. And it's so important as this technology is developing that we have people like Suvanka in the room when AI progress and opportunities are being debated, so that we have the anchor point of what is the benefit for humans in this. So please do store questions. I mean, there are lots of things I'd love us to dig into there. So, and also just to give Suvanka your comments and thoughts when we go through the end of presentations. Thank you again. Excellent. So we're now going to switch over to French. Well, I'm not, but Abdoulaye is. Abdoulaye runs a business called Appy Afrique, as we were mentioning, which is working in Senegal and is making a real difference to women's lives there, to mums and dads of young girls, but also to the communities as a whole, and in a really practical, productive way, as you'll hear. So I think you'll be very excited to hear more about his initiative and what's going on in the future for it. Abdoulaye, over to you. Thank you.
Is it working? Thank you very much, Katie. So I'm going to talk about something in Senegal and in Africa, 2 things. Everything that things that people the things that people see and do not talk about, and people talk about and do not see. I've studied in France. I studied there for 3 years, and every year I used to go on holiday to Senegal with my children. I was in Dakar with my family. I stayed there, and then 10 years ago I said, okay, I'm going to go and see Senegal, be a sightseer there. And what did I see along the beaches? I don't know whether you've been to Africa. All sorts of nappies on the river shores, on the shores of, and I thought, well, never seen that. I didn't realize that when we used to go on holiday on Africa. Of course, I tend to stay in sort of capitals. Anyway, in other words, when I was talking to my granddaughter, she said, well, when I have my menstruations, I don't go to school. That's just the way things are. As I didn't think that things could go as far as that. So why did we create this? We do not realize. I tried to study to understand what was happening, what impact this would have on our environment. I realized that a child from 0 to 3 produces 3 tons of waste. And in Africa, in Senegal in particular, we don't have a waste management system. If you go to Senegal, every time you go into a town, you see a huge heap of waste, and then you come out, you steal the same heap of waste wherever you are. So I thought, well, there's a major problem. And I realized one of these nappies takes 450 years to actually break down. And we have no way of sorting this out. So this other problem with menstruations, with the studies that I've been able to look at, 45% of girls missed schools when they had their menstruations, their cycle, which is unthinkable. You see that in statistics, of course, but I didn't realize that it actually happened in my family too. So in terms of employment, I'm giving you a few figures because I find that interesting. 67% of women in Eastern Africa don't have a job. So I thought, what's the point of me staying in France then? Wouldn't that be more useful if I went back to Africa? And with my wife, we decided to move to Senegal because we thought, then I'm 40 now, I better do something useful. Maybe I'll sleep better at night. And if you see how the demographic is evolving, there are 190 million women. In 5 years, there'll be 223 million women, and 67% of the women won't have any jobs. So if, nobody does anything, it'll carry on. It's the same thing for children. There are 13 million children who actually are basically year in, year out on the scene. So there'll be 150 million in 16 years. Can you imagine the waste that this makes? Over, an amazing heap. I was shocked by this. So with 4 partners, my wife and 2 other partners, we created Happy Afrique. We want to reduce waste. I'm fed up with it. I don't want to see that everywhere in Africa, in Senegal. My ambition is not to completely bring down to 0, but I'd like to play my role, do my share. So if we can reduce waste, then that would be great. Preserve health. Why preserve health? Because what I didn't know either is that there are 50 chemicals in those waste matters, particularly nappies. In Africa, it's very hot, and we know that this creates lots of problems. I bought nappies in France, in Senegal. They're not all the same. What's inside them is completely different. So girls have their menstruation for 40 years, so you have to deal with that. You can't imagine not to actually do something about the waste it creates and create jobs as well. If we don't have small businesses that create jobs, we've created 8 jobs, because with us it's 10 people, 10 staff. We're just outside Dakar. And that's how you can really have a real impact. And also basically inspire the people. Everybody has to play their role. I'm trying to play my role. And then we'll be able to sleep better. Because whenever I saw those figures, I stopped sleeping at night. So we want to have a sustainable Africa, responsible Africa as well. So we'll create 2 types of products, reusable hygiene products. Essentially nappies, they work very well. They can be used over 40 times. So when you have 1 ton less waste if you use that. I met women who were given that for free, And they immediately saw the use of this and, gosh, great, no waste. What we bought about 100 francs for a nappy basically stays the same. So everybody feels that there's a change. With 8 sort of pants and 12 inserts, there's no problem, basically. And we have the problem of washing as well. There's no problem with washing with water. But everybody is clean, and that is also an amazing plus. Hygienic sort of, as you can see, these can be reused again 400 times, which is amazing. And we have got another system which we call the useful kit. When we met teachers in schools, we realized that girls had problems finding these type of tools. There's no structure. Sometimes in schools there are no toilets. So there are hinders. When I think about what my granddaughter used to say, when I have my menstruations, it's best if I stay at home. But over 20 years, that means, that has really potential repercussions. So this allows girls to be basically autonomous. And it's not just in Senegal. Girls don't talk, mothers sometimes don't talk about things. So sometimes not everybody has got the same type of information. So we made a guide, what are menstruations, how can you actually handle them with having the proper sanitary towels. So that will bring comfort, autonomy with healthy products, natural products. But create all these products without informing people, well, it's like doing nothing. People have to know about that, so created sort of special projects to make people aware of all this and informing them. It's only if people know that people can change their habits. So created Let's Change the Rules, which also is a pun on menstruations in French. And you explain everybody. It's taboo, of course, to talk about this. People say, "What? You're a boy and a man? You talk about this?" Particularly in Senegal, Muslim people, men who talk about this say, "Well, you must be mad. It's a girl's story. It's nothing to do with us." Nothing. I've got 2 daughters. I don't want them to sort of worry about that sort of thing. So we created information campaign. Changing the rules in the local, in the vernacular, because of course there's no internet. It's not as widespread. It's not the same culture. If a Senegalese girl reacts like a Parisian girl, that's not really looked at very, positively by the community. So we have to explain, and it's taking up quite well, I would say. We have a Facebook page. There are mobile applications as well attached to that. We've got a 3rd prize of RFI last year, the International Radio Service, French Radio Service. And we realized that mothers didn't talk to their girls about that. So we have workshops. We invite mothers who come with their daughters. And we ask nurses to come, what to do, when are you going to get your menstruations. And when you come out of that, lots of mothers thank us warmly for doing that, because there's such a taboo. This is surrounded, such taboo. So that, as I said, we also have that kit. We bring that kit to help them. We also create another program which is called Take Part. We don't want to have low-level products. They are natural, organic products that are a little bit expensive. It's 20 francs. The kit, it's a bit expensive for Senegal. We're trying to lower the price. We're trying to think about this. But this program enables basically third parties to subsidize people who cannot afford to buy that, whether it's towels for, maybe in remote parts of the country. And that's working quite well. We have partners. You can see them here. Our official partners, but we also have some on the ground with women's network. I don't know whether you know, but in France there are all sorts of networks, tontines we call them, women gather, the 20, 50 women sort of meet basically once a week or not, and then they put some money down to help, because you have to know that savings in Senegal, well, people don't put money in the banks. So it's as simple as that. It's the only way you can fund campaigns like this. So we're trying to leverage that sort of situation. We try to explain and make sure that women actually play their role, their fully fledged role. We also have partners like businesses that can finance kits and support us. I just wanted to... Mother Teresa said, you can do what I can't do. I can do what you can't do, but together we can do great things. It's by being together. We all play our role. That's how we can make great things together. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. What a wonderful, inspiring story. And how lovely this role of partnerships comes again, all through these stories, that exactly as Mother Teresa says, you can't do things alone, but win partnerships. And breaking these taboos. Also, I feel that Happy Afrique is something of a movement and a campaign, but it's also a business, and these two going together, changing the world through a network and a movement, but running a business at the core of it to underpin all of that. So a fantastic example of local but also systemic and global change. Thank you. Please put questions and thoughts in your heads. Would you like to answer one now? Yes. I think it can be either, because we have translation. So
Bonjour.
Hello. I found that project really great. I wanted to know whether you also go into schools, universities. Secondly, whether you can also make men aware of that problem too. Yes. I didn't show you all the pictures, but our workshops are next to a high school or grammar school. And we've launched many campaigns. We have Women's Day. We have campaigns in schools, maternities, in nurseries. We really work with the networks that are already there on the ground. I think it's being close to people, being there where things are happening that matters. It's only locally that it works, because the leaders just follow suit. They're not going to invent something. So we work with lycées, with women's network on the ground. We do lots of campaigning in that way.
I'm going to move to hear from Charlotte Sewell. Charlotte is working with a company called Cook Foods, who we described, based in Kent, not very far from here, as the crow flies, as we say, and has done various roles, but really focused on how do we create the most impact as a business in our local communities and really drive change to be sustainable and a positive force for good, which their B Corp status is absolutely underpinned. Charlotte has also worked and helped us as we were setting up the B Corp movement in the UK. So she's not just a friend and a colleague, but she's a real inspiration. So give it up for Charlotte now.
Thank you, Katie. So I feel very humble talking after Abdoulaye and Sivanka, because Cook is a very different kind of business to these businesses. We've heard this morning about businesses that were created to solve a really important global, social, and local problem. I think, even though I love Cook, and I feel very proud to work for Cook, it's fair to say that we are not taking on a problem on that scale. But what really interests me is the same themes that can run through a small organization that is set up to solve a problem versus an ordinary business that then looks at how it can solve problems using the ordinary business model. Does that make sense? So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today from the perspective of Cook. So if anyone lives in France, the closest thing I can compare Cook to is probably Picard. Effectively, we make really posh, delicious frozen food for people who are cash rich but time poor. So as you can see, we are not solving a social or global problem. However, we are thinking about how we can use our business to make small changes that can actually have a very high impact local effect and also, I hope, contribute to something a little bit further afield. So this is Cook. We were set up by a family in 1997. We've just had our 20th birthday. We're still family owned and run, and that's really important to enabling us to make some of the decisions we've made. This year, we employed our 1,000th employee. When I joined the business 4 years ago, we had 600 people, so it's growing very fast. We are also a vertically integrated business. So we make all our food ourselves, and then we own our own warehousing and distribution, and we also own our shops all across the UK. So maybe we're just difficult, but we refuse to work with the big supermarkets in the UK. So we don't work with Tesco or with Sainsbury's because we really want to hang on to our independence. So instead, we support small retailers. So we have 87 of our own shops, but we also sell through very small farm shops or garden centres or independent delis. And then you'll see at the moment our turnover is about 70 million. So we're a growing business. And there's a lot of this. There are a lot of people in our model, so we're very bottom heavy. This is not a clever way to run a business if you want to make a lot of money, because what we've done is just tried to get as many people involved at as many points as possible. So we make everything by hand. When you look at our tiny canapes that we sell, they're made by hand, they take hours. Obviously, it would be faster to do it in a factory. Instead, we use a big kitchen because what we want to do is create meaningful jobs for people who need them. We work in an area of North Kent, which is one of the top 5 most deprived areas in the UK. So we have people there who really struggle to find jobs which are meaningful and which are well paid and which offer them progression. Lots and lots of the people who work for us at Cook are on benefits, and they can have quite difficult family backgrounds. So the job is really important at the heart of what we're doing. So we have lots of people in our kitchens, about 400 people. But then we also have a whole network of the people who work in our shops. So our whole model is that we love the high street, yeah? In some ways, Amazon is fantastic. In some ways, these digital solutions are fantastic. But you do miss something when you shop online compared to when you go into a shop. What we also find when we look at our customers is lots of our customers are people who live alone and are very busy. They are buying our food because they're busy and they're always in a hurry. So to create a moment inside a shop where somebody looks at them, talks to them, tries to create a solution for them, or just gets to know them is incredibly valuable. Although we have lots of people shopping with us who we would call yummy mummies, or people who are very chic, we also might have quite elderly people who live alone and are not seeing very many people in their week. We have people who walk to our shops once a day to buy one meal every day just for an excuse to go into the shop and to talk to Pam and Margaret and have a conversation. It's not about the fish pie or the beef bourguignon. It's kind of about having somebody to talk to. And we've noticed that's a really important bit of our job. So that's our shops. We have about 400 people who work in our shops across the UK as well. So I said that Cook is a family business, and we're still a growing business. About 8 years ago, we realized, wait a minute, there aren't just 30 of us anymore. If we want to carry on growing in the way we've grown and have the values we have, then we probably need to write down what our values are. So these are our values. There are 5 values. I think most of them explain themselves. Be remarkable. You have to be so amazing that nobody could help but remark on what good service you've done. Care. Be part of the family. We say at Cook we're always going to have a row, but we've got to make up when we've had a row, yeah? And you've got to muck in. And have fun. But my favourite one is Churchill's pig. I'll tell you a quick story about Winston Churchill, because I'm British, obviously. I want to talk about Winston Churchill. Apparently, he loved the pig because he said that some animals look up to a man and some animals look down on a man. A cat looks down on a man. But a pig looks a man in the eye. And so at Cook, that is how we want to talk to each other. We want to look each other in the eye, yeah? So it's basically our no bullshit rule at Cook. This means you can't lie, don't be two-faced. Churchill's pig, tell me the truth, be honest. So when we set up the business, we started by thinking about our workplace community. How can we be part of growing a workplace community that is truly vibrant? So we did some very simple things. We decided we would sign up to the living wage, which in the UK is a lot higher than the national minimum wage. So we pay the living wage. This makes a big difference to people in North Kent. We also set up a scheme to offer no-interest hardship loans. So anyone who works for us who's going through a difficult time, maybe they suddenly need to pay rent or their washing machine has broken, they have 3 children, we can lend them £500 up to £1,000, no interest, and we'll guarantee that loan for them. We also have access to great training. We've set up a special scheme called the Dream Academy, which means anybody who works for us can do life coaching to help them achieve their dream. So just beginning with investing in our people. And the normal things people would do, like offer good benefits. What we know at Cook is we can't be the biggest company with the best fancy healthcare or really expensive benefits, but we can do simple, human-centered things. So at Cook, everybody always gets their birthday off. Or when you get married, of course, we'll give you loads of our food. And if you want your Cook food at your wedding, then we'll give you a massive discount. Or when your baby is born, we'll stock up your freezer with our food, the simple things. This year, we also bought a holiday home, so anyone at Cook can go on a holiday to the sea and stay in our holiday home. I've spoken to people in our kitchen who haven't been on holiday with their family for 40 years, but their holiday home enabled them to come. And these are people who have a job in the UK, but they just don't make enough money to ever go on holiday. So it's making a big difference. I think after we focused on our workplace community for so long, we started to realize that we could actually do something more. We're a small, humble business, but we could actually look a bit outside of ourselves. And it was about that time that we found out about the wonderful B Corp community, this little red badge we're all wearing, which is an international community of businesses who are all looking to try to redefine capitalism, try to find out if actually we can use business as a force for good. So in 2013, Cook took the very hard test. Suvanka can agree, the BIA is very hard. And we wanted to see, are we a good business? Can we pass? Can we proudly wear the badge? In order to become a B Corp, you have to get 80 points out of 200. Cook got 80. Actually, 79.8. So we scraped in. But that was the beginning of a long journey for us of trying to learn from the best people in the world across very many different industries. So that's why we became a B Corp, because we wanted to join an international community of people to learn from. Also because at Cook, we love food and we love drink, and we wanted to find the most fun people who we could play with. So this community has become a community of parties and good times and deep relationships and lots of friends across the globe. And because we work in a very ugly industrial estate in North Kent, it's quite cool to have Patagonia as our friends in California, or to have friends all over South America who we can learn from. And that's very exciting to us who actually, you know, especially when you live on an island that has just decided to leave the most exciting international community it's part of, it's very nice to still feel like you're part of a family. I won't talk any more about Brexit. I'll try and move on. So being a B Corp has changed the conversations that we've been able to have with all of our suppliers. So at Cook, I think we make 150 different SKUs, yeah? So we make very many different types of food. We have about 130 suppliers. So we work with lots of different protein farmers and suppliers in the UK, but also if you imagine all the fresh vegetables that we use every day, we know we are part of this huge supply chain globally. Our spices are coming from India. A lot of our vegetables are coming from Europe. We are part of that global farming community that we were talking about earlier. Being a B Corp has helped us ask the questions we want to ask of the people who supply us. So who is actually picking those green beans that we're buying from you in Kenya? How can we guarantee that you're treating those people right? Are they in the education we'd like them to be in? What kind of energy are you using? Is the energy you're using renewable? The B Corp certification has kind of given us the validation to ask that question, but also to be honest about what we're doing right and what we can learn from other people on. So we just share our score, they can see our humble score, but they can also see that we're invested in this and we're trying to improve. So that helped us to think a bit outside of our own community. It also made us realize we had to find a way of explaining what this crazy thing that we were trying to do with our small family business. We got round to that about 2 years ago, and we just spent a long time saying, well, what is it that really excites us? We love it when people get together over food, have a good time, have ideas, and build a relationship. And we realized that the reason we always go out with our pig farmers for a beer and we stay over and we have a party is because we just love building relationships. And so actually that's kind of become Cook's tagline. We say that we want to nourish relationships wherever we're working. And this has really helped us think about what that means in our communities. So we know we want to nourish relationships with our people and their work. That's where it all started. We also want to nourish relationships between business and society. That's why we became a B Corp. But we know we're part of this global food system. So we want to, of course, nourish relationships with food and where it comes from. And the final piece in yellow is the piece I just want to touch on quickly now. So we want to nourish relationships with our customers and their communities. And what does that look like through our shops? So firstly, why do we have shops? Obviously, it doesn't make any monetary sense to have shops. We have a growing online business, and it would be so much cheaper for us just to deliver our food straight from the internet to our customers' homes. But as I talked about before, we found that our shops can do something special that we can't do via our website. So that's why we choose to keep these shops growing, to build community in those local areas where having a growing high street is really important. And that got us thinking, is there more that we can do? So every day at Cook, every day that I talk to somebody who works in a shop, I hear a different story, and often quite a remarkable story. So the other day, it was actually a customer who was telling me that she hadn't heard from her father-in-law for 2 days, and she was getting a little bit worried, and she just thought, oh, well, maybe he's just been tired, he had a cold, maybe he hasn't phoned me. And then she got a phone call from the Cook shop where her father-in-law lives. And they called her and they said, oh, we've actually been a bit worried about Bob because he didn't come in to buy his shepherd's pie. So we went to his house to visit him, and we realized he had a fall. And the reason he hadn't come in is that he was lying on the floor. So the family of the man didn't know, but the people who work in the shop knew. And for me, that is something very special. So our shops can be, I suppose, hyper-local, if we talk about that. They really understand what is going on in their communities. And we've realized at Cook, we've always said to people who run the shops, you know best. If you think somebody needs to be given something for free, if you think you need to leave the shop to carry something to somebody's car 2 roads away, you make the right decision, decide what you need to do. We promise you won't get in trouble. But we realized we could go further. So this year, we invented something. It's only very silly, and it's still an experiment, but it's called the Care Card. What this does is just a magic card that gives anyone who has it 30% off our food for 12 months. So maybe you're going through a difficult time. We often get letters from people who have children in hospital, and what they find, the hardest thing is if they have other children, it's very hard to keep eating as a family if you're spending many hours visiting the hospital. But our food can go in the microwave, and then it can feel just like what you would eat at home. And so on a hospital bed, you can all sit around together and have some semblance of normality, yeah? That's often a story we hear of why people use our food. So we realized, well, actually for those people who are going through hell, is there not something we could do to make them feel a little bit like we cared about them, or just to make their life a bit simpler? So this is how the Care Card was born. Anybody who works in a Cook shop, if they get into a conversation with someone and they think, wait a minute, you're in a horrible time, this is a crunch time for you, maybe somebody in your family has just died and you're not used to looking after yourself and cooking, maybe you're ill and you're struggling, you're on crutches, it's hard to cook, okay, we could just give you the Care Card, and for 12 months you can basically get our food at cost. It makes a big difference. So this is what we've tried, and as you would imagine, the response has been amazing. The extraordinary letters that I've had from people who have said, I went into the Cook shop And I don't know how, but I just mentioned that my wife was having chemo, and somebody in that shop spent half an hour looking for this special card for me. When I came back, they presented it to me. And he said, I had to run out of the shop because I was nearly crying, and I didn't know what to do, because my friends and family don't know how to talk to me because my wife is ill. But the people in the shop knew how to make me feel recognized. So it's something small, but anybody who runs a shop could do that, yeah? And that's what we want to look at doing at Cook. So this is the care card. How do we build these deeper relationships through our communities, through our shops on the high street? There is another scheme we run which is similar, and this is to support people who are hosting local events. So I think we heard already about these kind of women's unions in Senegal. In the UK, we also have a similar situation with the kind of the mothers' union, but there are lots of community groups who regularly meet, and they might use our food. Maybe they're doing a fundraising event in a church or in a synagogue. Maybe they are having a garden party. Maybe they're having a street party. And food that you can take from the freezer obviously makes that simpler. We also see a lot of older people who are trying to get together to eat, but they have lost confidence with cooking. So if they can buy a casserole from us, it makes it easier to have that dinner. So again, we give them the discount. And we call this our community kitchen. We've been doing it for 4 years. Last year, we had 361 community events hosted by people who shop with us. So that's nearly one event a day. And it's lovely that our food is a small part of that, but we can help to grow these fantastic events that are happening all over the UK at a time when we know that loneliness and social isolation are really contributing to poor mental health. So again, how can we just use our food to build deeper relationships in our communities? And then the last thing I just wanted to mention very briefly is a program that we've formalized in the last year or two. At Cook, we have always had a little bit of a heart for how can you find talent in places where other people have stopped looking for it. And we know that lots of people who come to work for us at Cook feel that at Cook they're given opportunities that they haven't been given anywhere else. So what we ask people to think about is just to think about a time in your life when you did something that you were truly ashamed of. Remember how that feels. Remember how it felt to think about having done that. And now imagine that everybody you know and people you don't know call you by that thing. So by the bully, or by the person who cheated, or by the person who lied. Imagine you are known by that. And you're known by that for a very long time. And now put those feelings to one side and think about a time when somebody believed in you. Maybe it was a teacher, maybe it was a sports coach, maybe it was somebody who saw that you could do something and they thought that you could be fantastic. And actually, by getting to know them and working with them, you discovered new things about yourself. We want you to think about moving from the first feeling to the second feeling. And that's what we're trying to do with our Raw Talent program. So we have set up this scheme to offer jobs to people who are facing all sorts of barriers to employment. Maybe they have spent time in prison, maybe they have been off work because they have had poor mental health, maybe they have spent time without a fixed address, they've been homeless. And the Raw Talent program is called Ready and Working, Raw Talent. It's for people who are ready to come back to work and just need a bit of extra help. It's still very small at Cook. So far, we've offered 62 jobs to people facing these barriers. But right now, we have people working with us in our kitchens, in our shops, and in the office who are our raw talents. And this scheme has been amazing because it gives new opportunities to people who had given up hope in themselves. And it's not just that person who benefits. Everybody in the kitchen team who works with them gets to see that something remarkable is happening in that person's life. Every day when they go home to whatever network they have, friends or family, those people can see that through work they can change their own life. And we are seeing a dramatic effect in the communities where these people come from. So this is our Raw Talent program. And that's about how does Cook invest in the broader community. The person who runs that community says she wants to make a dent in North Kent. And that's all we can do, just make a small dent working with the prisons close to us in what happens to those people. We know that the people who get a job after prison are so many more times likely to stay in work and to never return back to prison if they have a job within the first 6 months of leaving. So that's what we're trying to do. So just to end, I think you can all think of a time when you have built relationships with people over food. I hope you'll get to over the rest of this conference, whether it's sharing a cookie at a coffee break or a lunch or a dinner. I know the French do this very well with lovely long lunches, so well done. But how can you use your product to think about building deeper relationships? How can you use the idea at the heart of the organization you're working in to build relationships? That's what we're really thinking about at Cook. We just want to use our food to nourish relationships because we know that community growth and improvement to big global problems all starts with relationships at the heart of it. And I ended on the same quote, very surprisingly, to Abdoulaye. So we are part of a global community without realizing it. Exactly, we hadn't even seen. So funny. So we always say this at Cook, and I'll say it again in English. I can do things you cannot, you can do things I cannot. Together we can do great things. And that is because Cook, as you know, is one small business. We're a tiny SME with global problems. But hopefully through these micro relationships happening all over the place, we can start to build the global community that we want to build. Thank you very much.
Mother Teresa speaks to us all. How wonderful. What's so lovely, I think, is just the sense that you ask the questions, or you think that the potential of the human capacity to both overcome things they're dealing with, but also to make things happen together is just endless. But there is a sense of bravery, I think, amongst all of our speakers. You can hear that they've opened up little areas that maybe are tricky. They've had conversations that are difficult to have. They've broken some taboos. They've mixed human and a technology component and built between them the bridges of how that can both be used to improve humans' lives, really. So there's many, many themes there I'd love to pull out. We've now got plenty of time for some thoughts, comments, questions. So I'll start with you, and I would also like to intervene with some as well. Wonderful.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Sivanka just a little bit more about the business model that is utilized for the micro entrepreneurs. So who pays? How does it work? Like, how does that actual little micro model work?
Okay. That's a good question. So again, just to draw an analogy, the micro entrepreneurs or the agro entrepreneurs, interchangeable, are the gigsters of the new economy. So you can draw an analogy to an Uber driver who earns money on the number of rides. So for an agro entrepreneur, they work within a catchment area of, say, 100 to 500 farmers. And for every transaction that they do through Bloom, they get an incentive. And that incentive allows them to not only stick to our platform, but also provide and facilitate the transactions to the farmers. Now, every time we get any kind of revenue from the farmers that participate in the system, so the farmers have to pay a subscription fee, and this is something that we are still testing on the ground to understand its feasibility. Out of that subscription fee, we give away 40% of that to the micro entrepreneurs, allowing them to earn more than what they would earn just via transactions. So this twin business model allows these micro entrepreneurs, wherever we set them up, to be a part of the Bloom platform and keep on providing those services. However, I'm not saying that the attrition rate is not going to be high. The attrition rate was high in the previous years, but as we try to understand more about their needs and aspirations and how they want to build a community of farmers by themselves, we are able to provide the necessary services and keep them into our Bloom platform.
Thank you very much. My name is Habib Al-Marashi. I come from the United Arab Emirates. Wonderful discussions on the different topics. What I'm concluding in all of that while there is a very strong, direction to robotize the world, I see the human spirit really rebelling against it and coming at the core of it. So all the three examples that you gave, wonderful, really manifestation of what human beings can and will be doing when they come together. And that comes as a result of being a good human being. So my question to Mr. Mishra, can you please share with us, some tangible results of the implementation of this digital revolution? With Mr. Abu, I would like to ask you, how did you manage to overcome the cultural challenge in the whole process? And with Cook, I have a few questions, actually. And it's beautiful what you put across. Can you share with us what are the percentages of the, sourcing from the local market? What is the percentage of the online business that you have? Do you write the type of preservatives that you have put in your food? And how do you measure the impact of raw talent? Thank you very much.
I think maybe let's stop for questions there and just quickly respond to those.
Cool. Okay, so I had 3 questions. What's the percentage of sourcing from local market, percentage online, and how do we measure raw talent? So at Cook, one day I hope we will be like 50% vegetarian. Sadly, not right now. So at the moment, a high percentage of our meals do involve meat. All of our meat is basically from the UK. So about 90% of all of our protein comes from the UK. So it's pretty local because we're a small island, yeah? The only meat that doesn't at the moment is sometimes in busy seasons, we get some lamb from New Zealand. So I hope that answers your local question. In general, I'd say about 75% of our ingredients would come from Europe. But at the moment, it's mainly the meat from the UK, and we still depend quite a lot on Europe for the vegetables. Who knows what will happen after March? Fingers crossed. Okay. In terms of the percentage online, at the moment, it's a small part of our business. So at the moment, we have about 30% from the shops that we own, about 30% from the shops that we sell through. We call them our concessions, like the farmers' markets. And then we have a growing business online, which it changes, so the numbers don't add up, but it's roughly 20% at any one time from our online business. And the final question was raw talent. It's in its early days. So how do we measure? What should we measure? Should we measure people's happiness? Should we measure how long they work for us? Actually, some of our biggest successes have been the people who have come and worked with us for 6 months and then gained the confidence to go and get the job they always dreamed of. So right now, Dell, a guy who works for us, all he has wanted to do for the time he's spent in prison is become a fitness trainer. And actually, this job at Cook is the first job he has ever had in his life because he's been in prison since he was 15. So my dream is that he leaves to do that. And he has been with us for 8 months now, and he should be released in the next few months because he works with us while he's at prison on day release. So I hope he will soon leave. So that could look like a bad number, but it's a good number. Does that make sense? So what we're trying to do is find a more human way to measure it. So it's going to be a combination of retention. I think it's a success if they stay longer than 6 months because it looks reliable on their CV. So that's the first thing we're trying to measure. And then we are developing our own system where when they arrive, they can rank how they would score themselves on different metrics. So how confident do I feel managing my money? How strong do I think my support network is right now? Could be friends, could be family. Another question we ask is, how is my personal confidence? And then another question we ask is, how good am I at building relationships with people and accepting feedback and working as part of a team? Once we have those 5 questions, we answer them together, and then we see where we can help them improve the score. So I run confidence training for everyone who works at Cook. We run that for 1,000 people. We would then spend special time with them working on their relationships with their managers, and each quarter we would measure how they're doing on their personal scores. So that's how it's developing. But it's the early days. I'll let you know in a year or two where it's got to. Abdoulaye?
Thank you, Charlotte. How do we overcome the cultural challenge? Well, it's not easy, as you said, in African, in Muslim countries in particular. So we have two solutions, at least. We informing, that's essential. Programs changing the rules, that helps us communicate with young people, mothers, the workshops that we organize, that really works very well. We're very happy about that. And the other solution is to communicate to religious leaders. We're setting up a program because religious leaders have tremendous power. In Senegal, as you know, there are 2 religious orders, and we try to really do some lobbying and explain to them that it's important. There are also religious taboos attached to this. So we try to speak to the leaders so that people can speak to people, and going through that channel is particularly important. We also work by example, basically. We tried to have this Réseau Alliance to, of course, set this up throughout Senegal. In my neighborhood, people in Senegal, the idea of waste is very complex. When you go and buy, people buy basically, they buy their breakfast, for example. They have a small plastic cup, a plastic tool, then a bag where you have the milk, a bag where you have the coffee. So you have all this waste. So what I used to do in France, I've got fabric, for example, bags. And when I say to the shopkeepers, I'll give you those fabric bags, for example, and you give them to people. I give them the example. You can't impose anything. You have to inspire them, show them that it can work and it's possible to change. And for nappies, it's the same. Of course, we sell them. Those who cannot afford to buy them, all the people who work with me, when they have children, I bring nappies free. Everybody's impressed to see how they can be recycled like that, or reused, rather. And that's how we proceed.
That was a question about the tangible metrics on our implementation side. So it's an interesting spin because Charlotte, whatever metric she gave was on the entire ecosystem, and the question that you asked to Abdoulaye was more on the side of understanding how facilitation of behavioral change happens. And with the stakeholders that we work with, let me just give you simple numbers. We started in India, we grew up in India, worked our way through Bangladesh, Cambodia, Nepal. It's easier said than done. So, and we reached out to working with 70,000 farmers. Now, point be noted that 70,000 farmers that we worked with, they were all on a project-driven mode. So there was someone giving money for it, be it a private capital or philanthropic capital. We worked with the farmers, and then when the project money ran out, poof, they just didn't want to pay the money to avail the services. It was a learning process, and over the years when we iterated, we understood that there needs to be a part-time tariff model. Because there is one thing which I would like to share, and the epiphany that I stumbled upon was, if the farmers are the most important segments of my work, they are also by far the most unapologetic people. And it's important to understand two sides of the same coin. And when we worked with 287 of these micro-entrepreneurs reaching out to 70,000 farmers, those learnings were influential for me to undertake that pivot that I did in 2017. And then we started measuring every single aspect that Bloom will be able to give. Number of farmers, number of active farmers, number of farmers using chemical inputs, number of farmers transitioning from chemical inputs to organic inputs. Now, the point is, the algorithm that I've built is not to be exclusive. It's not given to a Syngenta, it's not given to a DuPont. It's meant to be for the farmers, and the engine is structured in such a way that it will only self-perpetuate itself on the basis of farmers' interactions. And therefore, we are able to assess this transition from chemical to organic inputs. Boosting yields, reduced costs, increased income, everything can be tracked. And that's at the farmer level. And as you asked the question about the micro-entrepreneur, because we have that business model with the micro-entrepreneur, we have to track all the incentives they make and therefore their increased income or neutral or no income that they are earning from the system. There are cases where there would be no income as well, but it depends on region to region. Input companies and buyers on feasibility of getting access to such markets and how they've been able to help their bottom line change after getting access to our farmers. So if you look at it, it's cross-lateral, it's multilateral, and being an ecosystem derivative, we have to measure outcomes and impact across the system. Did I make sure I answered the question?
Fantastic. Yeah, we have a saying in the B Corp movement about measure what matters, and the trouble is nearly everything matters at some point. So it's really important to know what are the things you're trying to pull out. In the interest of time, because we don't have too much longer, I know, can we collect maybe 2 or 3 questions and then bring them to the panel? I know you had a question. Is there a mic? And I know over here, yeah, there was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I bring?
Hi, I just wanted to ask the same question as the beginning about the business model for the two other speakers, in fact. Please. You explained about your own. Sorry, you explained about your own business model. So I wanted to know how, from where you started, and also how you've been financing every steps. And because, especially in Africa, I think people that don't have a lot of money also. So you are offering a lot of things. How do you manage to find some investors or partnerships? I don't know, and develop some win-win collaboration. Thank you.
Perfect. One more. Not sure who's now got the microphone.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Merci pour la.
Thank you very much for the explanations you've given on the way of creating human relationship through economic relationship. For Abdoulaye, I'd like to ask you a question, but also the others. In order to foster businesses like that, you have to have human investment to change people, to train entrepreneurs, to change business relationship. Well, we're doing this in Benin. We'll talk about that tomorrow. How do you finance these human investments, this initial human investment? And those two economic business models, it's very tempting, but there are other business models, capitalistic-oriented in Africa. There are lots of import products that kill existing relationships. Abdoulaye, can you say a bit more about that?
Hi. I have a question for Charlotte. And I think it was very interesting, your vision, your model. But how can you transfer your ideas in a big company? And I'm talking from my experience because I lived in London for 5 years. And I started to work in a small coffee shop, but it was in a big company. And I wasn't allowed to make relationships with clients because we used to have lonely people, and most of them elderly. So that's my question. How you can transfer your ideas in a big company?
Hi, I'm Emma from a B Corp in France. So, hey. I just had a question for Cook. How do you have other relationships with other shops in your streets? And I really like your slide with you show all the shops that are different. So thank you for that.
Lovely, excellent. So maybe we can take business model 1. Abdoulaye, maybe you will also start with this, and then we will.
Thank you. How did we finance ourselves? How did we find the funding? So I financed everything myself from my own pocket for 2 years. And since last year, we've got funding from an association to buy the raw material, but we realize that when you have products and you explain, you can sell them. At the beginning, of course, there has to be initial funding. I put all my money in the whole thing. I didn't want to get a loan because it's 12% the sort of interest that you have to pay. So I had a zero interest fund from an association that saw what we did. And now we have business angels that are approaching us to try and fund our operation. So whenever you're financed by other people, you have conditions that you have to fulfill. So we don't want to relinquish our part of the business, that sort of spiritual part of the business. If we can do it on our with our own strength, we will. But we don't have major financial problems. We buy the raw material. It's true that the problem is BFR, because the only thing we don't do is that we buy the raw material in Europe. You can't find that sort of fabric in Africa. The rest is done in Africa, but we have to buy that from Europe. So, as I said, now there are business angels who are approaching us, so it can't be bad. Now, the human involvement, it's a lot of training, education, because when we started, I'll give you an example, we started with 2 seamstresses. They worked 12 kilometers from where we lived. So what we did, mustn't put pressure on people. There's no point. People won't work, and they work badly. So what I did, I took a flat next to that workshop, and I said, okay, every morning, every weekend you can go home. I'm there. They're just next to in the workshop. They've been very faithful and loyal. When you show people that you take into account their needs, you respect them, there's no reason. We don't have a turnover. All the people who came to us stayed. The retention rate is good. Now, the risk for other businesses, we earn money. We have to. It's important to do that, but not at any cost. I don't want to do that. There's a market. For example, as I said, in the 5 to 7 years, 150 million children are going to be born, so plenty of nappies to sell, and sanitary towels as well. So I don't want to give my product to anybody for them to sell it. We have a profit, because, of course, if we didn't have profit, we couldn't survive, but we want to share them out. And just to give you an example, I want to give my products to major supermarkets who will devalue it and would. I went to see supermarkets. They wanted to see our products. I went to see those supermarkets. I won't say who they were, but they said, okay, we know that the product is doing well, but it's expensive. We're going to lower our margins. But so I work with other distributors, so I've got something like 15 or so. If the distributor lowers their margin, then the price will go down, and no one will earn anything apart from him. So they're little sort of moves. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to work with local people. I win, they win, because otherwise there'll only be that big supermarket there on the Steen.
Comments from you about working in the large, how this can play in the larger company, and also how you can work with others in the high street.
Perfect. So I'll try and answer very quickly because I'm aware of time. So for the big company, what I would say is a great way to do this is to start very small. Sometimes big organizations are very scared of empowering their employees to take decisions that could cost them money or could seem a bit human and erratic. So if you come up with a very small program and you encourage your staff to be free over just that one program, I think that's good. Like in Pret, each person can give away 10 coffees a day, you know? It's a small thing. And then I would say make the business case. So find the problem that your business wants to solve. Is it because you work for a global coffee company and everyone hates you because you don't pay tax and they think you're evil and you don't have a personality? Well, maybe you could set up a scheme where you get people to tell great stories about how friendly you are. Because the great thing about doing things with people is they are automatic story machines, and they will tell those stories for you. You don't need to go to a storytelling branding workshop. You can just run something for a community, and they will tell the story about how good it was for them. So find the business case, find the thing that that brand needs to solve, and then find a small offering, and then prototype it. So try it in 3 shops. Or in a very small place, and then you can prove it works. What you see with our community events is they're win-win. We give 30% off our food, but somebody hosts a quiz night for 100 people, and then guess what? 80 people have tried our beef bourguignon who'd never tried it before. So it's great marketing. So some of these things just make really good business sense, as well as being kind and generous. And then the other thing, I just wanted to answer that question about how to work with other shops on the high street. I love this question, so thank you. What we do at Cook is we have a program where we can give what we call a trade discount of 10%, or sometimes it's 20% or 30%, because frankly, our managers do what they like. And they can just make relationships with anyone on their high street to give them a card so that they can come in and anyone who works for them can get the discounts. We also host tasting events. So we do like a lock-in where we close our shop in the evening, and then we cook some of our food and we invite the local traders who work on our street to come and try it. We also tell them about our community discount if they want to host events. So I guess it's just letting people be people, do what you would normally do if you were trying to make friends, and if you can use our food in that way, then fine. Because the magic of all of this stuff, just like with business, no one wants to be sold to, people just want to make friends and get to know people. So anything you can do that just makes you more human, do it. And usually it's really cheap and easy to do. Because you asked a question about training. How do you train people? Guess what? You don't need to train people to be human, because we came with it naturally. And I think the magic of this stuff with financing it is, how do you tap into those pockets of abundance? So we invested in designing a confidence training. We had to take people off the line in the kitchen that is very expensive, bring them in from the vans, from the lorries, to have this training, how to be more confident, how to be themselves. Is that very expensive? No. Because actually they end up happier and healthier, and everything about their life is better because they are connecting with themselves. So how do you do one small thing that makes them happier and more effective? They will give so much more to you in loyalty, in brilliant customer service, and they'll just take fewer days off sick, you know, they'll just be happier. So I would say find those pockets of abundance and tap into them as contagious.
Fantastic. I'm so aware we've overrun, but I just want to leave everybody with these amazing entrepreneurs. Would you not agree how fantastic they are? Absolutely brilliant. I wanted to ask them each to just give 2 adjectives. They're wearing this coat of entrepreneurship to make a real difference and an impact. How does that feel? Because that's quite a big burden. So I want you to give 2 words each. Does it feel comfortable? Does it feel, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but to give just some sense of what it is that it feels like to be really trying to change a phenomenal issue through what you do. Can you give us 2 words? Does it feel comfortable?
Of course, of course. So I think the
2
first,
words.
the first feeling is sometimes it's overpowering.
Yeah.
And the second is tenacity.
Ah, lovely, lovely. Charlotte, what would you say?
I'd say exciting and humbling.
Good, lovely. Duani?
Alors, moi je disais être bien.
I would say to feel good. You feel good when you do good things. Feeling good. That's important, I'd say. Feeling good. And the other word is be of service to other people. Because when I create jobs, when I hire someone, I can see the tremendous difference it can have in their family. That is immense pleasure. Thank you.
Can you give a big shout out for your appreciation? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you so much to our organisers, to Réseau Alliance for all making it happen. I think you're all now meant to be in other sessions. Are we very late for the next sessions? It's okay. Good. Excellent. Thank you again for being a wonderful audience. Thank you.